Most of us as small business owners didn't go into business to lead people. Today, I'm excited to bring to you Shaina Lane. She is a leadership coach and the owner of Premier Professional Coaching. She's certified and she is also the author of Leadership is Easy, Said No One Ever. Today, we dive into how do we go from dumping tasks onto our employees into teaching them and leading them and mentoring them so that we can start to free ourselves up as small business owners so that we can give them the autonomy and they can actually help our business grow. Whether you hire part-time college students or you hire salaried managers, this episode is packed with lots of really good practical tips that's going to help you be a better leader and ultimately grow your business. Welcome to the Main Street Success Stories podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Kok. I've been a business owner for about 25 years, and now I'm a business coach. I actually turned my first business into a franchise and successfully sold it after owning and operating it for 20 years. I prioritize building a business while also building a life and love working with the creative entrepreneur. I mostly work with emerging business owners who desire growth. They are in their first 5 years of the journey and want a plan that's going to help them succeed for years to come. They're tired of not getting paid enough, feel stuck, and want more for their business and family. If you are a business owner and you're feeling stressed about how to attract more customers, you have a really good sales month, but then you look at your bank account and wonder where the money went. You look at your financial statements, but if you're being honest, you're not really sure what to do with the information. And you just tell yourself, if I work harder, it'll fix all my issues, only to feel exhausted and never see things improve. You're here because you want to build your business, but you also want to build a life that you love. I invite you to learn more about one of my 3 coaching programs designed to help you earn more and stress less. You can choose which option works best for you. Imagine this. You have a clear plan and momentum, and you're gaining more clients every week. Your revenue climbs by 20% or more. You save 5 hours a week because you know exactly where to show up. You're experiencing double-digit growth in your profits. People refer customers to your business because they understand exactly who you help and what you do. If this is you and you desire more, reach out, let's have a conversation, and you can click in the show notes below. Shaina, welcome to the show today. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So, Shaina, you are a leadership development coach, and you usually work with people in corporate America. But I was really wanted to have you on the show because I know firsthand from owning my own business and just out there talking with small business owners, most of us, well, probably all of us, but I'll say most of us did not go into business to manage people.
Yep. Yep.
We started a business because we had a passion for something, a product, a service. And we really don't even think about the people aspect until we get a few years down the road. And then everyone's telling us we got to learn to delegate and we need to hire a team because we know we can't build a business without a team.
Mm-hmm.
And I love your approach. And I really wanted to bring you on today to just help us kind of understand what it is that as we're growing a small business, as we start to hire people and even promote them to manager positions, some of those tools that we need to know. And I know you have a lot of tools in your toolbox. But before we dive in, give us a little brief kind of how did you end up becoming a leadership coach?
Yeah. It's interesting. So I started my career in sports medicine and I rose through the ranks of leadership until I was in a position to have my role eliminated. And, they say you never really arrive as a leader until you've had a position eliminated. So
yeah.
I had to kind of rethink what I wanted to be when I grew up again. And so it was everything that I loved about like leadership and management roles kind of lived under that HR umbrella. I wanted to shift my career from doing management and leadership to developing managers and leaders because I know what a difference it can make when you have somebody who invests in you as a leader. So I shifted my career into HR and then eventually got into leadership coaching through a couple of courses that I took. I was like, hey, wait a minute, this is a different direction. And I kind of like this. So that's how I got into leadership coaching. And then, of course, I took so many career pivots along the way. I went and got a career coaching credential just to kind of formally say, I can support you in your career. I can help you get you to where you want to go, navigate some of those ups and downs. I've been there, done it. And now I'm official with my credentials.
And you are certified and have a very impressive list of credentials. And I think you really hit something on the head there when you said develop leaders. My background is in corporate America. A lot of my friends are in corporate America. And I feel like the typical linear path is people get promoted, they start managing people, and then I don't know, 6 months down the road, all of a sudden it's like, oh, do you need help? Do you need
Yeah.
some tactics or some strategies? How's that going
Yeah.
managing all those people? We
Yeah.
really, why is that? Why is that like a skill that is not taught before you get promoted?
Yeah, it's interesting. I equate it to learning a new sport, right? Let's say you grow up playing basketball and you're a really good basketball player, and then somebody hands you a golf club and says, "Hey, go play golf." Completely different, right?
Right.
And so a lot of times we go through either college or we get our training and we get into a career where we're a subject matter expert in something, whether you're a nurse, whether you're a software developer, whether you're in sales, and you get promoted because you're really good at those skills. And you're promoted because those competencies, you manage work well. So they say, hey, let's just keep jumping you up the hierarchy here. And then you get into leadership and nobody's taught you how to lead. It's a completely different skill set that for some reason nobody talks about before you get into leadership, right? And I think a lot of times it's because those leaders just have their head underwater, just trying to survive to get to the surface. And so they're not thinking about developing that next level of leader. And so that's what my goal is to number one, start the conversation early. Start it now. If you're thinking that you might want to be a leader, let's start talking about leadership competencies. So that's an easy transition for you when it's time for you to make that jump. You're prepared.
Oh, wouldn't that be a nice world we live in? And I think you're right, especially, when I'm thinking about entrepreneurs, we are we have a huge list of tasks. And when our tasks start to overflow and take over our lives and we can't, get things done, we start to hire. And what do? We hire and then we give the tasks to our people. And you mention it in your book, which I loved your book, by the way, and I do want to
Thank
talk
you.
about that in a little bit here, about how do we start to move from task driven to people centered. And that is, I think, the piece that can really be missing. So you must have gotten into leadership coach. You saw this need. Was there like a really bad experience you had with somebody who maybe managed you that the light bulb went off for you and you thought, you know what, I need to really help people learn how to be better managers?
Yeah, and Jennifer, and it's really funny that you say that coming right off the heels of talking about being task focused versus leadership focused, because that really was the pivotal point for me when I was working in an organization. I had for a few years worked under a really, really strong leader. She was like the epitome of leadership. She invested and she developed her senior leadership team, and that was the first time that somebody ever told me. Actually, I was several years into my leadership career. That was the first time anybody ever told me that leadership is different. Shaina, you're not leading, you're managing your producer mindset, right? She invested, she showed me what leadership was, and then she left the organization. And my department got rolled up under another department, and the leader there was exactly the opposite. And the funny thing was, those two worked together in a different organization, both came to this one running different departments, and they were polar opposites. And so the leader that I was working with under was very task driven, wanted to keep control of everything. And I had been functioning quite independently in my role for 3 years, was capable, and she was slowly pulling it away from me, pulling my autonomy and my responsibility away from me. Um, I can only guess as to why, but when I've seen people do that in the past, it's because they want to own and control. Well, she became a stopgap in the organization. Things would get to her and they would die because she was so busy. She couldn't keep up and was completely ineffective. But it got to the point where she decided she was going to eliminate my role. And luckily, the chairman of the department, the physician that I was working with at the time, said, you know what? Shaina's been here for 10 years. She's had 2 promotions. Every job she's worked in has run better than it did before. We'll have a job for her as long as she needs it. So ultimately, they didn't put me out on the streets, but this leader was slowly pulling all of my responsibility and autonomy away. And it wasn't a fun spot to be in. And so again, I was in that point where I was like, I have to think about what do I want to be when I grow up? And it just really hit me that the difference it made in my career and how I showed up for my team and what we could accomplish when I had really strong leadership. And I said, you know what? There's a better way to do this. We need more of those good leaders in the world. And so that's why I set out on the journey that I set out on, is to help people understand how to do it right.
Wow, thankfully that chairman stepped in, or like you said, one person could have been so pivotal in the change of your career and the detriment to your career. And when you were
Mhm.
saying that, it made me think of small business owners. We struggle with letting go. We struggle with delegating and the control because it's like our baby. It becomes emotional. And
Yep.
sometimes we lose the objective view of everything. And, what happens a lot of times is those small business owners become the bottleneck. You said the stopgap, but I call it the bottleneck in small business. We hire people and then we don't give them the autonomy or the support and things that they need to produce what we want them to do. So then we just become the bottleneck. We're just managing one more task, really, instead of a
Mhm.
person. So let's dive into some kind of practical things that small business owners can do. Let's start with like your traditional brick and mortar. So these would be boutiques or coffee shops or restaurants. And a lot of these employees are minimum wage. A lot of them are college students. And I find, and I made this mistake, I owned a bakery and a lot of my staff were this market, college students, high school students. They were there for a short stint of time, maybe a couple years if I was lucky. And I made the
Mhm.
mistake as a leader of not really bringing them into the big picture of what I was doing because in my mind, I thought, well, they're just here for their Starbucks money. They're just here for a little gas money. And that was a mistake. And I learned that because there tend to be this lack of enthusiasm for my product and my customers and they wanted to do a good job, but I wasn't bringing them in. So help us kind of understand if that's kind of the big pool of people that we tend to bring in, how can we get them excited about our businesses?
Yeah, well, I think you said it. It's really involving them. So your business is your baby. You care about that business like nobody's business, right? To put it short.
Right, exactly.
But sometimes as a business owner, you can get a little bit tunnel visioned. And what you have to realize is that innovation, solutions to problems, it's born out of heterogeneity. One person doesn't always have the right answer. So while you've got your business to where it was, there's that saying like, what got you here won't get you there, right? If you want to take your business to the next level, you got to do something different. You can't keep doing the same things. And so helping these employees, connect them to the mission, help them, like, let them bring in ideas so they've got some ownership too, because then they start to see it as their baby and they care about it like their baby, just like you do, right? And they might have, if you say to them, like, next year, my vision is that we increase our profit 50%, right? You're still the visionary for the business. You still get to set the expectation. But if you say, let's say you've hired somebody who's the director of operations, or, you've got this group that's business students who are just working for their Starbucks money now, but you can incorporate them into the strategy and the vision and give them some say, they're going to stick around. And when it does come time for them to graduate and leave, they're going to tell their friends in the business school, they're going to say, hey, you want to go work at Jennifer's bakery? Because you know what I got to do? I got to sit in on strategic meetings with her. I had an idea when she wanted to increase profits 50%. She was just tunnel vision and thinking sales, sales, sales. I actually created this operational efficiency that saved us money, right? And so they're going to tell their friends, and that creates a pipeline then for you as a small business owner, right? Um, but maybe they get an internship and they want to stick around and stay with you part time, right? Maybe they come on it. Maybe they're a college student that's just working in the bakery, but then when they graduate with their business degree, they want to be a director of operations for you. You know, by that time, maybe you've grown that much. You need that person.
That's a good perspective. And I feel like it's a little bit of a mindset shift for the small business owner that your role isn't just to dump and delegate and pass these tasks on to your staff that you hire. It's an opportunity to mentor them,
Yeah.
to help them build skills, soft skills, hard skills that they can maybe take to their next job, especially if they're going to get a degree that's completely out of baking and, this situation. But, what an impact you can make. And I think sometimes we get so short-sighted because we're just so busy that we
Yep.
forget that's an opportunity for us.
Yeah, and that's what keeps most leaders stuck, right? Is that busy producer mindset. I've got all of these tasks. And what I often hear that is people are talking about retention. I can't keep people. I'm always recruiting. I have to spend all my days finding people and hiring them, and then they leave a couple months later. At some point, you have to take a step back and look at the bigger picture and say, why am I purging employees? What can I do differently to keep them so I can get out of, I call it the ring of fire, that vicious
Mm,
cycle of like being
yes.
short staffed, right? How do I get out of this ring of fire and be able to do the strategic work that I want to do? And that's where, your engagement and retention strategy comes in.
One thing you talked about in your book is the importance of one-on-one conversations. Take us through kind of some good steps. Like, let's say there's somebody out there that isn't really doing that today. Take us through
Yeah.
how to get started. How do you lead the conversation? And what is the purpose of having those one-on-ones with every single employee, whether they work 5 hours a week in your bakery or they are your operations manager?
Oh my gosh, so many thoughts come to my head. But, you know, the thing is start today. Having
Yes, just
one-to-ones with your
start.
team, that if you remember anything from this, it's just start. One-to-ones are one of the most powerful tools that leaders have at your disposal because it keeps that feedback loop going with your team, right? What's most important to them? So ultimately, one-on-ones, effective one-on-ones, are employee led. They drive the conversation. What is most important to them? Now, if you've never had a one-on-one with them and you sit down for the first time and say, hey, we're going to have a one-on-one, they aren't going to know what to say. You're going to have to prep them a little bit too, right? What is the purpose of this meeting? What do you want to get out of it? Hey, I want you to really have time with me to tell me what's most important to you. What do you want to get out of this job here, right? You may have that college student that you kind of think is transient. They're just going to be here for a little bit and they're going to move on. Maybe you find out something in that conversation that's really important to them that you can mentor them on. So the one-on-ones are the time where we sit down, we shut off all distractions, turn off the phone and the computer, and we say, hey, tell me what's important. What's going well in your job here? What do you not like? What keeps you here? What would make you leave, right? What do you want to do with the rest of your career? Do you enjoy what you're doing here? Is there a project here that you'd like to get involved in? How can I support you? So one-to-ones are really about how do you support your employees, but you learn so much through them as well that it's a tool for you to be better at your job, to engage and retain your employees, to get out of that vicious recruiting cycle and do the
Right.
strategic work that you love.
I love how you said employee led. And boy, do I wish I had you in your book when I was managing, because I will tell you, I started doing one-on-ones in my bakery and I scared the crap out of my employees because all of a
Yeah.
sudden I said, oh, we're going to have meetings. And, when you are the leader and the owner, there's this level of, oh gosh, why is she pulling me into her office? What did I do wrong? What happened? Because I didn't approach it properly. I didn't explain the purpose of it properly. In my mind, I thought it was all going to be kumbaya and positive. And these poor employees were walking into my office scared to death. And I remember physically seeing the release of when I said, oh, I just want to talk to you about how you like it here. And, do you have any ideas? And they were just like, oh, thank God. I thought I was getting fired. So obviously have some clear communication on the purpose of one-on-ones, right?
Yes. I always say share your intent, right? Because we're judged on our actions. We judge ourselves on our intent. Other people judge you on your actions. And like you brought up the topic of uncertainty, which creates so much fear for people. That is really a trigger for that fight or flight response in people, uncertainty. So if they don't know why you're doing this all of a sudden, it seems really odd, right? No amount of like, hey, I got you a cookie could fix that, right? But share your intent up front. And that eases a lot of that fear and uncertainty.
All right. So as we're out there managing, one-on-ones are critical, employee led, and you're going to find that you have a lot of gems. I had a college student that became my social media manager. And unless you sit down and ask, you're never going to find that. Well, then as we grow as business owners, there becomes a need to start having our own management levels. An operations manager is usually pretty typical first start or a general manager. And this can be tricky for small business owners because we are really letting go. We're really starting to feed that autonomy. We want someone to kind of handle those things and get us out of what I say the four walls. You've got to get out of the four walls if you're going to grow a business. So,
Mhm.
what are some good steps or what are some things that small business owners need to think about as they start to lead that mid level? And, we have to keep in mind that a lot of times small business owners might not have the large salary to attract really talented people. They have to bring other things to the party to get someone
Mhm.
excited about working there. So, what are some thoughts for that group of leaders, that
Yeah.
group of owners?
Yeah. Well, and I would tell you, since you brought up salary, I can't tell you how many times I have the conversation with leaders about like, well, I can't keep people on my team because the person down the street's paying more money, right? Listen, I've coached so many people through career transition who said, I am taking a big pay cut, but I want a better culture. I want to like what I'm doing. I want to enjoy what I'm doing. I don't care if I make less money. When people get to that burnout point of this just isn't a good environment, it doesn't matter what you're paying them, right? And we've all heard people say, you couldn't pay me enough to do that job. So
Right.
I always look like pay is one thing, but if you are treating them like a partner, right? If you are hiring the person who's passionate about operations, who has good ideas, and you bring them on, you let them do what they're good at. It's going to be hard, but like you talked about earlier, it's a mindset shift. You have got to know now you're leading a business, you're leading a person, and your job is to develop that person. Because as long as you're investing in them and they're seeing that you care about getting them to where they want to go in their career, whether it's with you, whether it's with somebody else, maybe they want to own their own bakery someday. And this is kind of a learning opportunity for them, right? They probably stick around a lot longer. The more autonomy you give them, the more good challenges, the more they see themselves growing. They stick around probably a little bit longer than maybe they jump ship if they're like, okay, I learned what I can learn from Jennifer. Now I'm out of here, right? I'm going to go do my own thing. So, did I answer your question? I feel like I went on a
You
couple tangents there.
No, this is all really good stuff because you're right. Culture, it comes to it. And I think we're seeing that more and more in today's world. I am hearing that employees are not motivated by the money. They're motivated by the fact that they can maybe bring their dog to work one day a week, or they get, a longer lunch
Yeah.
break on Fridays just to have some personal time. There's lots of things that we can do to inspire and motivate and attract the right people.
Yeah.
And I think autonomy is probably the key word and probably one of the hardest things that
Hmm.
small business owners have to learn. And I always say to them, just because you are allowing that person to run with that role doesn't mean you're an ostrich and putting your head in the sand. You
Right.
can have checkpoints, you can have benchmarks, you can, have those things so that you as the owner feel less
Hmm.
scared about letting go. And it's a
Yep.
baby step. It's not, you're not going to
Yep.
hire somebody and then tomorrow you're going to be like, okay, go run with it. I'll talk to you in
Here's the
6
business.
months.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a baby step, which I think helps the
Yeah.
owner and the employee kind of find their way. So one
Yeah.
of
And
the
it's
things, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and it's how you delegate too, right? So a lot of people think delegation is just like, I have to tell you exactly what I want you to do and how I want you to do it and when I want it done, right? But it's really setting an expectation. Here's the end result. This is what good looks like. And if it's still new to you, say, how would you want to get there, right? Ask them and have them walk through it with you, because then you can kind of course correct as they're going, which could be more important if you've got to delegate some high risk things, but let them have some autonomy in how they're going to do it. Hey, that sounds like a great plan. Go ahead, execute. I'll check in whenever, right? But you set the expectation, like you said, of let's check in every week on Friday so that you're not calling them every day saying, how's this going? How's this going? How's this going? Right?
Yeah.
We know
Or
we're going
why
to check
didn't
in
you
on
do it
Friday.
my way? Why didn't you do it this way?
Exactly.
I think we also think it needs to be
Exactly.
done the way that we do it.
Right. And that's where people start to feel micromanaged is like, give me an outcome and let me get there. But you're still setting an expectation. This is the outcome that I want to see. So you're not just blindly handing it over, you know, but give them some autonomy in how they get it done.
Yeah, and the open-ended question seems brilliant. Asking, putting it
Mhm.
back on them. Here's something that comes up a lot with my clients and this audience of small business owners is how to have the hard conversations. And I had to laugh in your book because I used to use the sandwich approach where you've got, the nice fluffy bread. So you say something really nice and then you get to the meat of it and then you end it with something really fluffy. And you have a different approach. You call it the SBI for situation, behavior, impact.
Yeah.
Take us
So,
through some quick tips on how do you handle those hard conversations when, something just repeatedly isn't getting done or there are things, they're just not quite representing your business the way you want them to. How do you kind of approach that?
well, first of all, don't put it off, right? Because what
Oh,
you
yeah.
tolerate, you promote. And so the conversations get harder and harder the longer you put it off because the reaction from that person's going to get bigger and bigger. They're going to say, well, I've been doing it like this for 6 months and you haven't said anything, right? That's when you get the big reaction. So SBI is a feedback model. It's situation, behavior, impact. It's funny. I just taught this class yesterday on feedback, and everybody was like, "What's wrong with the sandwich?"
Yeah, what happened to the sandwich? And
It's
for me,
always
owning a
moldy.
bakery, I used to call it the cookie sandwich. But then I thought, well, that doesn't work because the frosting is really the sweetest part, and that's supposed to be the
Yeah.
meat of it. So anyway,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm
Anyways,
digressing. I'm digressing here.
I know, but it's so funny. But that's how we were taught to give feedback with that sandwich approach, right? But that's been debunked over the years because it leaves a bad taste in your mouth, if you will. But people start to just expect anytime Jennifer gives me a compliment, there's something else. There's a criticism coming right behind it.
Oh,
So
interesting.
they stop hearing the positives that you say to them because they're just waiting for that shoe to drop. All right, she just gave me a compliment where there's a criticism coming right after it, right? So that's why we've gotten away from the sandwich. So I like to think of it as a feedback bank account. Whenever you put money into a bank account, you make a deposit. You don't just make a deposit to make a withdrawal, right? You don't get anywhere that way. So if you're making deposits and you're giving positive feedback, whenever you catch people doing something good, and it doesn't have to be extraordinary. Most people do work every day that's good enough and they want to be seen and valued for that. Find them doing good things, give them positive feedback whenever you see it. And then when something needs to be corrected, number one, there's greater trust because they know you're not just looking out for the bad stuff. They know you're looking out for the good stuff too, and it's not connected. So they receive that difficult feedback much better because, and my other tip that I'll tell you on that is when you have those one-to-ones and you know what their career goals are. Hey, Jennifer, I know someday you want to open your own bakery. Here's something that you're doing that I think might get in the way of that. Do you mind if I share it with you? Right? Because then you're tying it to what their goal is, where they want to go. So it shows that you're invested in them, you're supporting them. This is my intent. My intent is to help you. Can I share this with you? And most of the time they're going to say, yeah, or hey, I've noticed something that's going to kind of get in your way of running a bakery someday. Do you mind if I share? They're going to say, yeah, please. But again, you might react differently if you've been doing it for a year and I've just been letting it go. And then I'm like, hey, by the
Right.
way,
That's so brilliant. And I know we avoid it. We avoid it because it's awkward. And a lot of times these are small situations where there's only a couple people working for you. And so
yeah,
you don't want to set a tone or have a bad day or bring that up. But I really like this pivot from the sandwich to just kind of this feedback loop. Because you're right. If you're just given a compliment because then there's a zinger coming, it feels so disingenuous. And then people aren't going
yeah,
to even
yeah.
listen to your compliments. So
And they get confused because they're like, wait a minute, am I doing a good job or am I not doing a good job? Like, what am I? And so it dilutes the message, good and bad, right?
yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
So the work that you do, you work with, these newer managers. Tell us, share a story with something that just you loved, that warms your heart, that you were able to see a change in somebody's leadership.
Yeah, yeah. There was a leader that I was working with last year, actually, who worked in a small business and was really struggling with her confidence as a leader and how she wanted to be kind of known in the business world. And so we worked a lot on her strengths, how to understand her strengths, how to leverage, how to advocate for those. And the biggest thing is mindset shift. She was still stuck in that producer mindset of like, I've just got to do all of the work. And so we did some mindset work as well on this is what it looks like to produce. You get by addition. If you work on leadership mindset, you get by multiplication because you're getting work done through your team. And one of her biggest challenges was I have these strategic projects. I just can't get to them because I've got all of this day to day. There's interruptions, there's distractions. So through our work together, she was actually able to hire two new team members and she started that delegation process. and was able to create and carve out time for those strategic projects. What else did she do? She crafted a couple of big proposals that she would have never taken the driver's seat on in that organization. Won those proposals, so her decision making got stronger. She felt better. She was less stressed. Was able to go out and coach a kids soccer team because she had the time and the capacity. And again, it was all mindset work. Because as a leader or as a leadership coach, I can give you all the tools. I've got tons of tools, right? I can tell you, I can give you all the advice, but until you shift your mindset to want to operate from that leadership mindset, you're going to stay stuck.
And boy, you hit it on the head when you said she was able, the multiplication because you have more people doing things for you. And that's what small business owners need. We didn't start a business to manage people, to lead people. That's usually,
Right.
we don't even think about it. But we also
Yep.
didn't start a business for the business to own us. And that's typically what I see. We lose our freedom and flexibility that we craved because we're doing all the things ourselves, or we're just hiring, dumping, instead of actually delegating and focusing on the tasks instead of focusing on the people. So I love what you shared today. I am so thankful for this. And I love your book. Leadership is
Yay!
easy, said no one ever. And what I really enjoyed about your book was the fact that it's very inspiring, practical, but every chapter you give us a place to reflect on us as leaders, and then also what you call kind of habit trackers. These are habits, like you said, mindset, habit shifts, habit ideas. How do we start incorporating these things? And, the encouragement is you just got to start. You got to start somewhere because you have to think about the end goal here. And if you
Yeah.
can attract and develop a bunch of leaders in your in your business, in your organization, even if some of them are college students that only work 5 hours a week, that is going to free you up to get outside of your four walls and actually grow your business. Go have the conversations that you need to grow your business. So thank you, Shaina, today for everything. I am going to put a link to her book. I highly recommend every person listening to go buy this book because it is a great read and a very practical tool that you could keep close to your desk to pull out for when you have to have those hard conversations. And that's another free resource. You gave us a template on how to have those conversations. So I'll include that in the show notes too. So thank you
Yeah.
so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the shout out. This is so much fun. I really appreciate it.
Well, I love what you do. And so what does the next year look like for you in your leadership coaching?
So exciting. So exciting. I've got a couple big things coming up. Number one is I launched my Leadership at Lunch series because I know how busy leaders are. And so the point of this series is 4 sessions, 50 minutes, lunchtime. Let's get in. Let's talk about some practical tools that you can use. There's one course series that's mindset over management, right? Because it's a mindset. I'll give you all the tools, but you got to shift the mindset too. So Leadership at Lunch has picked up, and that's been really, really fun. And the other thing that I'm doing is I'm getting into keynote speaking on leadership to help inspire more leaders to shift into that leadership approach. And I will give you a little teaser here for your fans. I'm going to tie in my sports medicine background, and the working title so far is Leadership is a People Sport, and it's game day, baby.
Oh, I
So
love it.
if you like sports and you like leadership, or you want to like leadership, you're still struggling with the stress of it now, but you want to like leadership, that's coming up too. So super excited about that.
Oh, I love that. And I love that title because you're right. It's game day. Let's start today. So
You got
thanks.
to.
Thanks again. And I will be sure to put a link to your website too so everyone can follow along and keep up with all these great programs that you're offering.
Excellent. Thank you, Jennifer, so much.
I really appreciated Shaina's strategies and wisdom when it comes to becoming a better leader. And all of you out there that are building a business, the truth is you can't do this on your own. You need to surround yourself with talented employees, but you also need to learn how to lead them better to maximize not only their efficiencies and to help you grow your business, but also to improve retention. Nobody wants to be in that hamster wheel of always hiring, interviewing, and having to train. So I really loved some of her practical tips, starting one-on-one meetings on a regular basis in a way that not the way I did it, where it caused fear, but in a way that opens up that line of communication and how to have those difficult conversations. I think the key point there was do not wait. Go for it today. So I really hope you take some of these strategies and just try one of them and start to implement them. And I also encourage you to get her book and use the tools in the show notes to help you. Until next time, please keep supporting your local businesses. They need you more than ever. And please share this episode with someone that you think could benefit from it. Thanks for listening.